The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Wednesday, April 13th, 2016 are currently trading with gold at $1,246.13 an ounce, silver $16.29 an ounce, Texas crude $42.17 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 426 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1970, the Apollo 13 astronauts announced, "Houston, we've got a problem," as a result of a beach-built oxygen tank exploding en route to the moon. The beginning of the Apollo 13 crisis was 46 years ago, today in history. In recent news, more than 400 protesters were arrested last Monday outside of the U.S. Capitol from an organization called Democracy Spring, which is seeking to remove special interests from politics and raise awareness for change on restrictive voter identification laws. The demonstration resulted in arrest for what U.S. Capitol Police deemed unlawful demonstration activity, such as crowding and obstruction. Apparently, the protesters were sitting on the stairs of the east front of Capitol Hill. Democracy Spring said on their website that the protest was held to demand Congress take immediate action to end the corruption of big money in our politics and ensure free and fair elections. Peter Callahan, the group's communication coordinator, stated that, quote, "We see populism on the rise on both sides of the spectrum. Americans are sick and tired of their politicians being bought and paid for. Organizers are vowing to continue the demonstration every day for the duration of a week." The Pentagon declared today that the first phase of military operations against the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria are now over, and that the second phase is being implemented. Colonel Steve Warren, the spokesman for the U.S.-led coalition fighting ISIS, stated that Phase 2 is aimed at dismantling this enemy, while Phase 3 is ultimately the defeat of ISIS. Success in the first phase included the recapture of about 40% of the territory ISIS once held and the annihilation of key leaders and revenue sources. The second phase, now underway, is focusing on fragmenting ISIS and liberating key territories under their control, like taking back Mosul in Iraq and isolating Raqqa in Syria. The Lone Star Lowdown is currently looking for sponsors. If you have a product or a service you'd like to advertise with us, feel free to give me a call at 210-363-2257. This has been Rick Rohde with your Lowdown for April 13, 2016.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I have a joke for you.
Okay.
The government in this town is excellent and uses your tax dollars efficiently.
You thought you'd see it coming. The moment you comes with your food.
Bitcoin is immune from attack almost completely. Bitcoin, you actually gain far more from using the computing power to generate Bitcoin.
There's a system approaching perfection. Just in time for it to disappear. There's a system approaching perfection. Just in time for it to disappear.
We'll walk deeper into the belly of the beast. If it means I'm able to further limit reckless government spending. I mean, I have so many ideas. Some are simple, like take down traffic lights and eliminate the post office. The bigger ones will be tougher, like bring all of this crumbling to the ground.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Crypto Show, a show about disruptive technology, currency, and liberty, with a pinch of stick in it to the man. As always, we come to you live from the real heart of the resistance in Austin, Texas, deep beneath the Chase Bank, with a stack of Bitcoin miners at our back, undermining the bank and the man. We bring to you the latest info from those hacking away at the digital revolution and having some fun while we do it.
Celebrate. Yeah, we should celebrate every day, shouldn't we? Because life just gets more and more interesting with cryptocurrency, libertarianism, and all the fun theatrics coming out of politics. Not that we'll really talk about that because it's not worth talking about. Anyway, welcome to the Crypto Show. It is Wednesday, April 13th, 2016, and we are here on Logos Radio Network, as always, and we are brought to you by our sponsors, Brave New Books, Hill Country Home Improvements, and every Sunday, we bring you some news bits from Crypto Compare. So we look forward to that. It's always an additional informative part of the show, as well as a source of discussion to throw into the mix, as you may have heard on our last episode with David Johnston and his friend, whose name escapes me at the moment, but you can check that out and find out his name.
Jonathan Mohan.
Jonathan Mohan, great guy. He was a fun guest. But you can check out on thecryptoshow.com. Actually, we don't quite have it up there yet, but we will in the next day or two.
And he likes big blocks, and he cannot lie.
He does. Yeah, he wanted to do a Sir Mix-a-Lot parody using Bitcoin and getting all the major Bitcoin people in to throw to wrap a line of it. I thought that was hilarious. Well, today's episode is going to be pretty interesting. Coming up in a couple segments, we're going to have Kevin McKernan. He is I hope I pronounced that right. He is the chief scientific officer for medicinal genomics, and he will be talking to us about cannabis, which of course this month is cannabis month here on the Crypto Show, and more specifically the genetic side of cannabis. And maybe it sounds boring on the surface, but in fact it's really interesting stuff. And if you know anything about cannabis beyond just smoking it, genetics is really important in the breeding and growing of cannabis, and as he'll discuss with us, in its medicinal applications as well. So it's going to be a lot of interesting stuff. In the meantime, in studio, we are more than delighted to have a returning guest, Tatiana Moroz. How are you, Tatiana?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Happy to be here in person in Austin.
Incarnation, in
not
the
just
flesh.
calling in. I come to the Brave New Books.
Yeah,
studio.
You're such an important person, an important guest. We're never going to allow you ever again just to call in, because it doesn't do you justice. You have to be
Will
here.
You just send the jet to get me here?
I will send the Lear out to pick you up, and we've got a pilot standing by 24/7. And so whenever you feel like being on the show, we'll scoop you up, bring you back over, and after.
Is that good for the environment?
You know what? It adds to the carbon footprint, but you know what? Plants eat carbon, and we need plants for life. So it's good for the environment. Tatiana Moroz probably needs no introduction in the Bitcoin or libertarian sphere, but just in case you're new, and she does, she's a graduate of Berklee College of Music and has an extensive music career managing and promoting top New York recording studios. She has toured the globe singing and speaking alongside the likes of Ron Paul, Gary Johnson, there's my dyslexia again, Jill Stein, and Nudge Giapolitano. Just kidding. At various major events like Inside Bitcoin, South by Southwest, Bitcoin South.
Is that a mix of 3 different kinds of ice cream?
Yes. Chocolate, strawberry, and libertarian.
Oh, awesome.
She has independently produced and released 2 LPs, 2 EPs, and several singles. Her third LP was funded completely with cryptocurrency. And her latest project is the creation of a cryptocurrency all its own, Tatiana Coin, the first ever artist cryptocurrency. That's really awesome.
Thank you. I'm really excited about that, actually.
Well, and we had you on quite a while ago. It's been many months at least, and I think we briefly touched upon that. Well, let's talk about that starting out the gate. What inspired that move to create your own Tatiana Coin cryptocurrency? When did it launch, or is it still... does it still yet to be launched?
I will tell you the tale of Tatiana Coin.
Please.
So I got involved. I first heard about Bitcoin in August of 2012. And then I didn't care until about October of 2013. And then, I did my Bitcoin jingle and I played it for everybody and everybody was like, yay. And it was really wonderful and an amazing experience. And then I got to be friends with Adam B. Levine from Let's Talk Bitcoin. Obviously, our listeners know who that is. And
another talented musician.
He
singer.
is indeed, which you may not, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily know that off the bat. I always think of him more crypto involved, but yes, he is actually. So.
But when we had him on, we were making fun of him being part of Maroon 5 is why.
Oh no, he is like, he produces music at home as well.
I actually didn't know that.
Mind to Matter. That's his blog.
We'll have to check that out. We should have him back on just to talk about that. That's cool. Thanks for letting us know. Okay.
Oh, you didn't know that? I didn't realize the joke.
The Maroon 5 thing. Yeah, but I didn't know he was actually pretty talented in that regard.
Yeah, no, well,
I think sense.
Adam and I, we connect probably partially because of that, because he's an artist as well. And what happened was we were trying to solve the problems that we see artists having, right? No money, no fans. How do you talk to your fans, and how do you fund your record? How do you fund your career? And he was experimenting with LTB Coin, and then the other project was Tatiana Coin, which was the first ever artist cryptocurrency. And it allowed people to, donate money on a long-term basis. They get tokens instead of a fixed price. And there's a lot more flexibility, so you can, resell the tokens. And basically what you're doing is you're funding my career in advance. And it's like a little bit like a fan club as well, because usually with a crowdfund, you get your prize. That's the end of it. But what Tatiana Coin allows you to do is have a messaging layer with me. And so we launched this campaign. We raised about the equivalent of, let's say, $10,000.
Wow.
But in Bitcoin, of course. And I recorded my third album. And then I had some vocal problems, so I had to kind of pause everything for a little bit. And also, Tatiana Coin was successful because it was the first artist coin. People supported it, blah, blah. But there are some really difficult things in order to get into an artist coin, right? You need to buy Bitcoin. And back when we were doing it then, you had to go to 5 different websites, do all this stuff. It was a nightmare. Even people in Bitcoin couldn't figure it out.
We've
necessarily.
come a long way since then. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that Tokenly has really created those tools for me though, because I don't know who else has solved the problem of once you create your token, how do you actually use it? And that doesn't seem like such a big deal, but it actually is because you need a store that you can accept US dollars, Bitcoin, Tatiana Coin, any other cryptocurrency, in which they've provided that for me. Then, there's the Tokenly wallet. And now what we've done is we've integrated with Fermat, which does the front end development. I could talk about Fermat as well. And basically between Tokenly on the back end and Fermat on the front end, we're creating an artist coin app. So now as I'm putting out my album, I'm giving people a different experience. The original buyers of Tatiana Coin, they still got the best deal. Still love my homies. But I want to use this album in tandem with this app to sort of kind of give it a little bit more of a chance to catch on because, you put out an album independently, who cares? But I think that this artist coin can be something that other artists can adopt. And that was always our goal, was to help other artists remove the middleman, just connect them directly to their fans and crowdfund from them and communicate with them. Now we're going to have streaming abilities. The tokens will still be transferable and there'll be all these different features, almost like what you would get in terms of connection through social media, but social media falls short of that now. I'm sure you guys have put something up on Facebook and 7 people see it unless you pay Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a real drag. So,
because I'm really popular.
And it's always the 7 that you don't like.
Yeah.
No.
I feel like it's always the same 7, and I'm sick of that echo chamber. I have about 6,000 likes on Facebook and I post something and I get 38 people viewed it. Not 38 people liked it, 38 people viewed it. And it's just because Facebook wants to weasel money out of me. And okay, maybe I go to a different platform. But every time you go to a different platform, you lose people and they may change the rules on you. And you as a fan are also getting gypped. Maybe you want to know when my next show is. If people are on, liked my Tatiana Moreau's music page, then they would think, I know that Tatiana's going to be playing at Brave New Books this weekend because they're having a ribbon cutting ceremony for their new studio. Except they don't know that because Facebook isn't showing it to them. They're not even cognizant of that. But if you had an app directly to me on your phone that tells you all the exciting news and gives you backstage access to special content, token holders, they have token controlled access. They can get, for example, I made this, me and Lynn Albrecht, who you guys have on the show a lot. We know her. We went to Prague and Poland in October, and I've had no time to put together content around it. But, I made a lot of journal entries and kind of wrote down my thoughts while we were there, and I haven't had a chance to assemble it. Well, that would be the kind of thing that I could put. If you're a real Tatiana Coin fan, or if you're a real Tatiana fan, now you get the inside skinny on what it was like in Auschwitz. What was the vibe in Poland when we were talking about the Silk Road and about privacy and about freedom and about cryptocurrency. And I think that is a story worth telling. And I don't know, I need to kind of get all my content together, but that'll be the next thing before we implement the actual app. I just have to get some cool stuff to hide behind the curtain, so to speak.
That's awesome. Well, I think you already do have a lot of cool stuff. And to the extent that you don't have cool stuff, you're a very talented person. So I think you're going to have a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipeline. So that's really neat. Yeah, I like that idea that, you've, without a cryptocurrency, say, I have seen other sites or other artists, obviously do these little perks that say you can pay extra for, but with Tatiana Coin, that you can use your cryptocurrency in order to do that, to access these special, VIP content, and then with this app, I think that's a great idea. Get rid of the middleman. That's what all these technologies are about, because the middleman, forget privacy and security, the middleman tends to disrupt the interaction of the artist and her fans by limiting likes and limiting information like you were talking about. And that's no bueno. So
it's really frustrating to see it because I was so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk more about that and other things on the other side of the break with Tatiana Moreau.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
This is what happens when you call the cops. Say what? This is what happens when you call the cops. Come on. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. I'm sick of people being victimized by criminal cops. Psychopathic predators terrorizing neighborhood blocks. Equipped with pepper spray, mace, cuffs, tasers, and glocks. They like Serial killers acting out subliminal thoughts. Forget what you taught. These cops have got a license to kill. Witness intimidation means that they can use it at will. Code of silence means that the pigs will never let out a squeal. And if they go to court, they know the judge will make them a deal. For real, that's why he's stopping me, locking me up and stopping me.
Welcome back, guys, to the Crypto Show, to the tunes of Rob Hustle. Check out robhustle.com, another talented artist who has been on the show, and talented artist with a message, no less.
Very cool ditty about Rob. Rob contacted me 2 days ago, and we're going to be talking with Ken Shamrock from the UFC champion. They're creating They're creating a boys' school, a boys' home for at-risk children, and they want to integrate Bitcoin as a donation tool for their page.
That is so cool.
So we're going to be talking with Frank and Ken Shamrock.
And that's going to be when? What dates?
As soon as we get it all worked out. But
so next month or so.
They're both former UFC champions.
That's crazy. Didn't you say he was like 4-time UFC champ?
Frank is
Frank Shamrock. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's a pretty cool little video out there. I think it's Bold as Blood or Bold.
Yeah, you sent it to me. I have to watch it.
It's really good. I watched it. It's pretty good.
I'll try to look for it over the break. Let the listeners know specifically. But that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, what could get better than charity and Bitcoin and UFC mixed martial arts fighting? Octagon. Right, Tatiana?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried out for that, Tatiana? Is that your new passion? Is that the little announcement you were going to?
Yes, that's the announcement I'm making. I'm going to be in wrestling as well. I'm leaving the Bitcoin space.
Cool. That's awesome. It's not wrestling. It's mixed martial arts. So they incorporate some aspects of wrestling and boxing and jiu-jitsu.
Well, I specialize in wrestling.
Oh, fair enough. Oh, okay. Fair enough. All right. Well, so we're
Stop trying to steal my dream.
I'm sorry, Tatiana. I have faith in you. I really do. I didn't mean it. So we're going to have a match between Danny and Tatiana coming up next month. So get ready for that preliminary UFC fight. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway.
Well, actually, I'll be back in Texas in October, so I think we should do it then.
Okay.
Are you guys going to Bob Murphy and Tom Woods' Contra Cruise? Contra Krugman cruise?
No. Is this a real thing?
This is a real thing.
This is a Contra Krugman economics cruise with Bob Murphy and Tom Woods. Did you really just say this?
Yeah, it's I think October 9th it's a full week, like October 9th to 17th.
Do you know how much it is?
I don't know.
Where are they going?
It's from Galveston though, so it's not far from you guys. At least you don't have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
They're going to 2 places in Mexico and then like Honduras or something. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Places with a beach.
Right. I just did my first cruise 3 years ago. Actually, I've done 2 cruises in the past 3 years, and I had a blast. And I have this like cruise addiction now. And if I get to go on a cruise with those 2 gentlemen
and me
and Tatiana, oh my God, that would be the greatest thing ever.
To make it worse, there's going to be donuts.
Oh my God.
I'm going to be singing too. That's why I'm going. It's only Tom and Bob this first round that are doing the talking, but I'm in the band with Dan Hagen, who's like this Nashville cat. Adam House, and I don't know who else, but it's going to be really fun.
That's really cool. We need to, wait, so that's in October?
It's in October, yeah.
Okay, we need to stay in touch because I want to go on this. It sounds like a lot of fun. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't think they're not trying to make $1 million or anything. They're just trying to get people to go. I think it's going to be super fun.
Yeah. Well, and just real quick, because I want to talk more about you. But so Contra Krugman, that makes sense on the surface. Are they just going to give talks on just various ways in which Krugman is wrong and to the delight of the listening audience?
Well, Bob and Tom have a show called Contra Krugman.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And so they're just trolling Krugman, I think, by calling it that.
That's awesome. I know Bob Murphy, Krugman is his sworn enemy. So that's going to be really exciting.
Well, Krugman is a loser. Look at him. He didn't even, they did, I guess, I don't know. I think he should have taken Bob up on the debate because they raised over $100,000 that they were going to give to homeless people.
Right. It was
if
contingent.
Krugman would debate Bob Murphy.
Right.
And I think that he should have done it.
And that's what's so sad is forget pride or whatever else. It was going to benefit charity. So why not? If Krugman is a New York Times columnist, Nobel Prize winner, if he knows everything like he acts like he does, then he should have done the debate. You're right. That would have been a really nice thing. But
he wussed out. He couldn't handle the heat in the kitchen.
Yeah, because he knew he'd get beat up by Bob Murphy, economically speaking. Well, that's awesome.
Oh, wait, you know what? Me and Bob, you guys should check it out. Me and Bob, we just did a Economics 101 video.
Cool.
Because I thought about how, when people are in different political backgrounds, the real reason why I think everybody's fighting is just a lack of understanding of how money works in economics.
Yeah.
So we did a really easy Bitcoin 101 with simple things. What's inflation? What's the business cycle? Why doesn't minimum wage work? That kind of stuff.
That's cool. And do you have a YouTube channel that you can find it on?
Yeah, it's on Forevermore Tatiana is my YouTube.
Forevermore Tatiana. Check that out, guys. I'm going to check that out after the show.
I'm excited about it. I thought it was really useful. I'm proud.
And was this a newer production or has it been around some time?
No, we did it in December, I guess, but I think I only put it out a couple weeks ago because I had to edit it, or I had a friend edit it, Josh Kane in NYU. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, quickly while we're on the subject, what other cool videos do you have on your YouTube channel that people should check out?
Actually, I have music stuff on there, which is cool, and people should check that out. But Stephanie Murphy from Let's Talk Bitcoin and we just did a Bitcoin 101 video series.
Cool.
So they're all 5 or 6 minute videos about different topics, how to get a wallet, how to earn Bitcoin, what is Bitcoin, really basic stuff. And I think it came out really well because it's not two dudes trying to show you how smart they are. It's just regular people talking about it.
Beautiful girls trying to talk in simple terms about Bitcoin.
I will take your compliment. Yes.
You just download the wallet first and then you see it looks like this.
Yes, that's normally what. Well, why do you think I didn't like Bitcoin? And actually, to be fair, Tony Glippy and Stephen Pear taught me about Bitcoin initially, and they're super smart. So I must have just not been with the times. Cause I can't imagine better advocates for it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't get told about it the first time by some dummies, though they did convince me to buy a little bit.
I was there at that event too in August of 2012, and
Tampa.
Yeah, and I seen the Bitcoin table there, and I went by and snickered at it and laughed. I should have bought some.
Oh, yeah, you should have. Well, it's one of those things that some really smart guys in the Bitcoin space are really articulate people, but they sort of forget that a lot of the rest of us are on 10 lower levels from them, and they just need practice and learning to kind of bring it down to our level. So I can understand why maybe didn't appreciate it the first time but it's not for your lack of intelligence. Just the big boys need to learn to bring it down to our level. But anyway, well, let's switch gears. Tatiana, tell us about your latest album.
Well, it's the first album funded completely on crypto, so I'm really excited. We recorded at Premier Studios in New York. I got all the musicians to take payment in Bitcoin. My engineer was paid in Bitcoin. I still have to get it mastered. And, I think it's the first ever fully funded with crypto album. So it'll be nice to share some of that footage. I think that, Valerian from Pop Chest, I don't know if you guys know Pop Chest. But anyway, he's really a great editor and a good friend of mine, and he offered to help me. So that'll awesome. Be maybe behind the Tatiana Coin paywall. But, kind of documenting the experience. And now I guess I'm finally ready to put it out. I got to really kind of do that with some thought, because if you don't have any money to support a release, you're screwed. And not that I have money now, but at least I have an app. And I figure if I do a crowdfund, like a pledge campaign, instead of saying, hey, donate money and you get an album, instead you donate money and I can help you get set up with making your own artist coin and then get a bunch of more test cases besides myself. Other artists seem to understand what I'm talking about, so that's encouraging. And they understand the pain points that we outline.
Yeah.
So the album is really good. I mean, it's full band. I have the Silk Road song on there. Cool. I have the Bitcoin jingle on there with a full band. It's really cool. But I think it might be my best record so far, so I'm really excited.
Wow, that's saying something. And is there a release date expected, or?
Well, I need the app to be out, and realistically, I really should put it out in about a month, but I have a feeling it'll end up dragging a little bit.
It would probably be pretty good, like when you're doing live gigs, or not even in the Bitcoin space, and someone's at your merch table, and you tell them, oh, here, don't buy the shirt, download this, and then we'll send you or you'll get the shirt then, but have them buy your artist coin so they're familiar with it and get it out there.
Well, I'll probably also just give people some. You know what I mean? Get a free app, get some free coins, try it out. Because, obviously I need money to promote myself. It's not really worthwhile to not do it. But at the same time, I'm more interested in getting the idea out there and the feedback.
Right. Well, it's just like even people who have tangible products for sale, they will give out free samples, right? So that's an old marketing principle, and it can be very effective. And I like the idea of using fundraisers, not necessarily for fans, but for fans who are musical artists and offering them services as perks. I think that's a cool idea. Well, we'll talk more with Tatiana and Kevin McKernan on the other side. Stay tuned, guys.
The fountain of youth? How about the fountain of health? Turmeric, a golden herb used in Indian cooking, contains an amazing compound that has researchers doing cartwheels. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll tell you about terrific turmeric in just a moment.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Turmeric is the spice that lends that golden yellow color to curry dishes. It's been traditionally used in Asian medicine to treat everything from indigestion to arthritis. Now Western doctors say curcumin, a compound found in turmeric, can help treat breast cancer and liver disease, reduce inflammation, and lower cholesterol. It may also help Alzheimer's disease, arthritis, irritable bowel syndrome, depression, and even lymphoma. You don't need expensive supplements to get the benefits. Turmeric is available in the spice aisle of your supermarket or as an ingredient in curry. Heat some oil in a pan, saute an onion, sprinkle in some turmeric, and add your favorite vegetable. Voila! No side effects and no prescription required. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
Live Free Speech Radio, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time. Take back the power. What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time. Take back the power.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show here on this lovely April 13th, 2016. And actually, I want to give a shout out to one of my best friends, Craig Cravens. Professor Craig Cravens, formerly of the University of Texas Slavic Department, now with the Slavic Department at the University of Indiana. It is his birthday today. I meant to do this actually at the beginning of the show, but I'll probably send him a recording of this so he can skip to this part and hear me wish him a happy birthday. So for all the Craig Cravens fans, and there are plenty actually, happy birthday to Craig, and I will eventually get you a Wikipedia page.
Is he related to Craig, the other Craig?
Craig Christ?
Craig Christ.
Well, it's funny you say that because he used to make that same joke basically about that. That's a Stephen Lynch song. It's pretty funny. Stephen Lynch is hilarious. Craig Christ. But anyway, back to our guest. In a few minutes, we're going to bring on our second guest, Kevin McKernan, chief scientist of genomics. Let me double check on that. Medicinal genomics. Thank you. And currently, though, we're talking with Tatiana Moroz. You can check out TatianaMoroz.com, and that's MOROZ is her last name. Her personal website. You can also check out her Twitter handle, Queen Tatiana, kind of like King Ladar. We should get you two together, King Ladar, Queen Tatiana.
All of the royalty come together.
That's really good. I like that. Do you ever do vocal spots or whatever?
He'll be back on the
27th. I used to do musical theater in high school, and I don't know. It's not hard to make little random voices and mess around.
You'd be surprised.
You're a creative person.
If you're still in town on the 27th, that's when he's coming back on.
I'm gone next week, but.
I like how she had, if you're a creative person, but most people aren't that creative. That's the big difference, I think.
You shouldn't be so hard on yourself.
Well, I mean, I fall into that category too, so. No, but you should do commercial spots. That's pretty cool. I like that.
I've done some voiceover work before.
Voiceover, thank you.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of the actual term for it. Okay.
I actually have a few different friends in the Liberty Movement that do it. Angel Clark does it. She's really awesome.
Yeah, we, real quick, we were at an Acapulco.
With her in Acapulco.
Oh, did you? Yeah. You lucky guys. She's like the coolest person there.
She was really cool. They took us to dinner, her and her husband, and let us spend the night at their 3-bedroom loft.
Because we were too drunk to drive.
Oh,
I
isn't
passed
that
out
cute?
at one point, and they were still up for several hours, and I was snoring in the background. It was great.
They're night owls.
They are. We stayed up super duper late, but it was a lot of fun. She was great, and she told us all about her books on tape stuff that they do. Yeah. So anyway, well, let's get back. So TatianaMoroz.com, Queen Tatiana on Twitter, and then you can also check out CryptoMediaHub.com, which I want to ask you about momentarily, as well as something you mentioned, Vermont. You can tell us more about that. But before we do that too, your latest album, according to you, your best album, it's going to be your third album. We're not quite sure when it's going to come out, but relatively soon.
I mean, a month or two. And it will probably be available for Tatiana coin holders within a month or two for sure. And in terms of a massive release, I mean, I want to make sure that I give it the best chance. So I want to make sure that I have enough marketing, but it should be in the next 2 months or something.
Awesome.
No, not that long.
What was the name of it again? You told me off air.
Oh, it's called Keep the Faith.
Keep the Faith.
Yeah.
Why keep the faith?
Well, because everything's freaking depressing out there, and everybody just has to, it's a little bit about kind of, how Ross says. Ross wrote me one day and he said, Tatiana, I don't want you to worry about what happened with your voice or what happened with me or with anything really, because as long as we're alive, there's reason to hope.
Wow.
And, people tell you to be positive all the time, and I want to smack them. I think that it's disingenuous.
Yeah.
But if somebody who's facing double life plus 40 years can be hopeful, I think it's obligatory on us, the people who want to save the world, the people who want to see things get better. We got to keep the faith. No, I mean, we can live with hope or we can live with despair, and I think we should live with hope.
Not to mention the $20 fine they gave him.
Yeah, I know, right? If only. No, that's beautiful.
What was the fine again?
$183 million, I think.
Well, that's
and 2 life sentences.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that's really true. I'm with you where it's people are always like, you just always have a positive attitude. But
don't you think they're the worst people? And they're usually people that are rich and you're just all broke and they're like, oh, you should just be happy. I'm like, I would be happy if I had money.
I know, they won't give you anything. It's like, well, if you give me some of your money,
I don't want anybody to give me anything, but I don't want them to give me a lecture. That's what I'm saying.
TheCryptoShow.com. We do have a QR code for
I like
Bitcoin
that.
donations. Give us money. No, but yeah, if Ross can be that optimistic, we can too.
I may need it for attorneys.
I know, right?
Well, there's a song called Keep the Faith on there as well that I wrote down in Gold's Culture.
Which ties into something that we may or may not get to this show, but we're going to talk about soon one way or another. So
one way or another.
One way or another. Well, real quick, let's kind of wrap up. And of course, you're welcome to stay with us with our next guest. And I really hope you do, because I think it's a topic you probably have as much interest in as we do.
How dare you accuse me of these kinds of behaviors?
What? Notice I said, as a weed do. Get it?
Oh.
Anyway.
There's all these jokes going over my head in this
Well,
show.
they're just really bad puns. It's not, don't even worry about it. Tell us about CryptoMediaHub.com.
Sure. So Crypto Media Hub is a advertising and PR agency for the Bitcoin space. I was working with Bitcoin Magazine for a while, but what I noticed was, people would come to me and they'd want to advertise, but they don't have they didn't always have the same thing that they wanted. They didn't always sell the same services. So since each media outlet is so different, they each have different metrics by which they gauge how they're going to sell you ads. It kind of takes a lot of, in order to be effective, it's really good to have a base knowledge, and that takes at least 10 or 15 hours of research to get.
Wow.
So I'm saving that for people, and they just come to me and I consult with them and I help them do ad buys, and I get them good prices. And then, I also do PR, and I work with a really great company out of New York. So we're actually throwing a party during Consensus. So yeah, lots of kind of events and PR stuff, and I'm doing consulting for Fermat, and I'm really enjoying that whole experience because they're the ones, working with Tatiana Coin, and I get to build people in because it's sort of a network that other different companies can build onto. So I'm not limited to working with, a wallet or something. I get to kind of bring in all different kinds of projects, and it's really fun.
I just see the smile on your face when you talk about it. It's clearly very exciting for you and has lots of potential, and you've been having a lot of fun with it. How long have you been doing it?
I've been working with Fermat since January and Tokenly forever. And now that they're kind of melding, it's been a lot of work and a lot of rough times the past couple of years, but it's really nice, even though I never thought it'd take this long, to kind of be really close to the finish line. Speaking of which, Tokenly is doing a crowdfund on Bank to the Future, and they just went past their first milestone. So they've raised $350,000.
Wow.
And they did it in less than 48 hours.
Wow.
Which means that they could build stuff for me. And I'm really happy for them because it's an amazing team over there. And
well, it's great.
Yeah, they've been bootstrapping this for a really long time. So congratulations.
Good for them. And then, your powers combined can create a lot of other awesome stuff too.
Definitely.
Well, so you mentioned Fermat, and you already kind of explained what they're about, but give us a little more in depth about them and what you're doing with them.
Well, what Fermat is it's a framework of kind of different components that you use to build apps, right? Sort of how WordPress, you can make your own website and you choose different plugins and you can kind of customize it even if you're dope. Fermat sets out to make different kinds of reusable code as a foundation that people can build off of, and they can specialize the function for their community. So a typical example would be, making a wallet. Well, a wallet for an artist coin is different than a wallet for some person in China or somebody in Africa or somebody who lives in New York and is just busy, like a regular wallet for Americans or something. So it allows you to do that. And so for people who want to start a new business, they can really get ramped up really quickly. They don't have to spend all this time and all these resources creating basically repetitive code because other companies have already made stuff that's similar. That basic infrastructure allows the community to grow because you're saving labor. And then the people who gave you those components, they're paid with micro use licenses. So that's kind of distributed to them. So they're incentivized.
Cool.
And then it also allows you to build all sorts of decentralized applications like an Uber, a decentralized, dating apps. I don't know, any kind of, like a TaskRabbit, all different kinds of things. So it's great because, again, like I said, I can bring in people who I think have cool projects and say, hey, I have a bunch of developers. We'd love to help you get your thing off the ground. We have over 60 full-time developers, I think. It's a lot. There's a lot of action going on. It's been in stealth for 2 years. So in the next week or two, we're going to be doing a big press release. I'm spilling the beans as we speak.
Uh-oh.
But you guys had Philip on the other day, so he told you about Philip.
That was on John's show, actually.
Oh, okay, cool. All right.
But close enough. John's show, our show.
Well, you were on that. I mean, you were hanging with us.
Yeah, I was sitting in.
But Tatiana herself broke it here on the Crypto Show. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And that's cool. So they have basically a lot of sort of intellectual capital that people can build on, software libraries, saving tons of time and money, and multiplying the possibilities for people to be creative and to be successful. That sounds really cool.
Yes, and it's censorship resistant because it lives on your end devices, so it's completely secure.
That's brilliant. We'll be right back with Kevin McKernan and Tatiana Moroz. Stay tuned, guys.
I don't want a chip in my babies. Stay out of our lives. Don't want no shackles. Don't want no shackles on me. I sit down with Big Brother. on, that big brother trying to track and trace me, and all you would tag the animals and tag everything on earth. I said, down with big brother. Down with big brother.
All right, welcome back to the Crypto Show, guys, on this lovely Wednesday, April 13th, 2016, here on Logos Radio Network. Brought to you, as always, by Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements. And every Sunday, we have a news minute brought to you by Crypto Compare, letting you know all that's happening in the past week in the Bitcoin space. And we were just talking with Tatiana Moroz, singer.
You forgot Carl's Jr. again.
Oh, Carl's Jr., dang it. They're going to cut off my lifetime supply of free burgers.
Wait, you have Carl Jr. as a sponsor? Does that mean you get free burgers?
Yeah.
When does that part of the show happen?
When you're not here. I'm not sharing my burgers with you.
Fine.
I eat all the burgers.
Whatever.
How do you think I got this chubby? Not by sharing burgers with Tatiana Moroz. Well, speaking of, or listening to rather, that smoke. I don't know what kind of smoke. Well, Tatiana, are you going to stick with us with our next guest?
I'll hang for a little while. I'm going to leave in a few, but I'll hang for the next segment.
Thanks. Well, Tatiana, always a pleasure. Thanks for sticking with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
excited to see you guys on Saturday, too.
Oh, yeah. We'll be here. We'll be here. Definitely make it a point to. And then we'll have you back on, too, in the near future to, for your album release, the app release, and all sorts of stuff that's coming up, it sounds like.
Well, I'll send you guys some of the music.
That sounds great.
That'll be fun, right?
Yeah, and we can play it on the show and try to promote your new album. That sounds great. And go on the cruise.
Oh my God, you guys totally have to go on the cruise.
I'm literally going.
I'm going to look it up and see how much it is right now.
Yeah, I'm starting to save right now.
Oh my God, it's open already on my phone. I already had it as a tab.
How appropriate. Well, we'll talk more about that off air because we need to get to our next guest. But check out Tatiana Moroz on Twitter, Queen Tatiana. Go to TatianaMoroz.com and CryptoMediaHub.com as well. Well, we're with our next guest who's on the line, Kevin McKernan. He's the Chief Scientific Officer of Medicinal Genomics. Kevin, how are you, sir?
Excellent. Thanks for having me on, guys. I've heard a bunch of nice guests on your show lately, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I don't know how we nabbed them, but somehow they've been nice enough to come on. We've had some great guests, and we're very excited about our two guests tonight.
We blackmail most of them, but
yeah, basically we're like the J Edgar Hoovers of Bitcoin. We just blackmail everybody into coming onto the show. We also do other things that J. Edgar Hoover did. No, but
no, you do that. I'm not down with that.
Anyway, on a more serious note, sorry, I got to reel myself in. But Kevin, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm really excited about having you on in this topic because, on the Crypto Show, it's Cannabis Legalization Month, as it was last year, and we love talking about cannabis, and not just because it's fun and recreational, but because it has so many uses and potential benefits for humanity. But tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll get into some of that.
Sure. So I'm someone actually new to the cannabis field. In 2011, I went about and quit my job and sequenced the cannabis genome and put it up in the cloud, and then ran like hell after all the news broke and kind of stayed away from it for a few years. But after that, caught a bunch of news. When Colorado went legal, we kind of reevaluated and said, all right, it's time to get back in and see what we can do in the space. So we do a lot of cannabis genetics, but it's really under the umbrella of a company that's mostly doing human genetics. We sequence a lot of kids with epilepsy and autism and developmental delay. And naturally, all of those patients, or some of them, I won't say all, have an interest in what's going on with cannabis because of all of the work people have seen with what it does with epilepsy.
Yeah, and in fact, I don't know if you're aware, but a little bit of big news here in Texas is the Texas legislature last year legalized non-psychedelic, non-THC cannabis, basically CBD cannabis, for use in child epileptic patients. And I believe that goes online next year. So it's a small step in the right direction here in Texas, and we're really excited about that. Well, and so you're Chief Scientific Officer for Medicinal Genomics. I noticed on a couple of the websites, a company, Curtigen Life Sciences.
Yes.
Were these the two companies you were just mentioning?
Yeah. So Curtigen focuses on sequencing humans, and they're CLIA and CAP certified lab. They're deep inside the medical system, providing information to physicians for day-to-day care. But Medicinal Genomics is the side of the company that's focused on the cannabis genetics side of things.
Okay, awesome. And so did I hear you right? I wasn't even aware of this when I was trying to do research on you. You actually sequenced the cannabis genome?
Yeah, 2011. We started that thing in May, and that was a crazy project. We had to build all the tools in my garage and make sure that we could fit it through a suitcase, piece of luggage to get to the TSA, which was tricky because they don't like ethanol, and so that stuff had to be repurchased in Holland, which is easy to find in Amsterdam actually. But nevertheless, it required a little bit of MacGyvering stuff. So all that happened inside the Dillon Hotel on the Kaisergracht in Amsterdam. We purified like 10 strains and then got the DNA sequenced and put it public as quickly as we could because it's a bear of a genome actually. It's kind of messy, and we figured we needed to crowdsource the solution to it.
I really respect that you released it to the public. I think you're right. Crowdsourcing is the way to go because something as complex and involved as the cannabis genome. So people are going to benefit the most from releasing that information and allowing all the talent and money that's out there to do their best to investigate the genome and make developments from that. So that's pretty awesome.
Within 24 hours, someone lined the whole thing up to the peach genome and ordered and oriented 90% of the contigs. It was they paid dividends instantly.
Wow.
I think there was a mention of Snoop Dogg doing his or what? What was the deal with Snoop Dogg?
So Snoop is doing all kinds of things in the field. He's going to roll out his own marquee strains. So he and Willie Nelson and Bob Marley's family are all putting out strains that have, it's kind of like the Paul Newman salad dressing with a little more spice.
And this is all going on the blockchain.
I don't know that Snoop's is, but this is a shout out to him if he listens to this, that he should. And hopefully we'll get into exactly why, because if he doesn't do it, there's cannabis patents that are starting to issue right now that arguably are going to claim a couple of his strains.
We totally need to get Ricky up there in the trailer park to sequence the hash coin.
Oh, God. You and your Trailer Park Boys references. I've still never seen that show, and I will never see that show. And I'm proud of it. I don't know about that. Maybe I would.
You got to sequence the hash coins.
I'm definitely curious to know more. We'll get into the blockchain stuff here shortly. But since we're on the subject of sequencing the cannabis genome, and I like that. So you said they lined it up with the peach genome. You said there was like a 90% matchup. Is that what you were saying?
Well, they were able to place 90% or order them against the peach genome, which is it's not the nearest cousin actually. Hops is a lot closer.
I heard that actually.
Yeah. There's a much better agreement with hops, and of course hops makes a lot of the same terpenes, and you can almost see the connection there. But it came out about 100,000 pieces, which is a lot for a genome. The human genome, after $300 million and 10 years, is probably in 100 pieces right now. So there's a lot to be desired, but it's one of the hardest genomes in the world to sequence. It's a billion bases long. It's 65% AT, and what that means, AT, C, and G, the letters in DNA. And humans on average are 50-50. We have equal balance of all four of those letters, but the cannabis genome has got a huge skew towards A and T, which makes it really hard to sequence and really hard to put the puzzle together because all the pieces look like they're the same color. And on top of that, the mother and father of a cannabis plant can be as distant as humans are to chimp and still interbreed and have productive offspring. So the two genomes, when you go to sequence them, because when you purify DNA from a plant, you actually sequence both the mother and the father at the same time, and it gets really messy when they're really different. And so it's probably, I think it's the trophy for the hardest genome out there, I think.
Wow. And so I remember watching one of your videos, and you mentioned that, as you kind of just already implied, that the genome of the cannabis plant, well, the genetic diversity among cannabis is something like 5 to 10 times as diverse as humans are, which sounds pretty diverse. What explains that diversity, and then what are some of the implications of that diversity?
So that's hard to tell at this stage. I think in general, plants carry a lot more redundancy. It's like a genetic insurance program because they can't run away from the weather or the prey, right? So they tend to have very large genomes, and they tend to replicate a lot of the genes. But at the same time, this is the earliest plant that we think humans have ever domesticated. And as a result of that, there's been another species that's been constantly crossing it for desired traits. And since it breeds very quickly, in every 12 weeks, you get lots of generations very quickly. Whereas humans might breed every 20 years, you tend to see generational turnarounds 2 or 3 times a year with the cannabis plant. So, there's probably a combination of forces going on there. But it's kind of hard to pinpoint today.
So it's kind of the botanical equivalent of the fruit fly, I guess, in that it breeds relatively quickly, and so it's kind of optimal for genetic research in that regard.
Yeah, but you never want to smoke your flies. It's a really bad idea.
That's probably great advice.
The softfly, I don't think, goes for very high prices on the Denver Market Street.
You should always preface that with dude,
aliens.
Aliens. I like that. Well, we're coming to break in about 1 minute and 20 seconds. I guess a question to lead out with is, how far back does genetic research on cannabis go?
That's actually a good question. So there hasn't been a whole lot of genomic sequencing until 2011. There have been discrete attempts to sequence THC synthase, which I think in the past were a little bit challenged because we didn't know how many copies of that gene there were. We now know that prohibition has made people breed for really high THC levels, and that's manifested itself in the genome of there being a gene replication event on the gene that makes THC synthase. So there's sometimes 6 to 8 copies of it. But many years ago, probably in the 80s, there've been people trying to sequence that gene, and they had no idea that there were so many copies of it. And so the techniques used to try and capture it were a little bit flawed. But it's probably only been really since probably the 90s where we've really been able to get accurate sequence out of plants like this. It was really post-PCR, which is a mid-80s invention. So not long, maybe 20, 30 years.
Okay, not long at all. Well, we're coming to break with Kevin McKernan and Tatiana Moroz. We'll talk more about weed on the other side, so stay tuned. All right, welcome back, guys, to the Crypto Show. The second half here on this lovely Wednesday, April 13th, 2016. Craig Craven's birthday. Another quick shout out to one of my best friends, Professor Craig Cravens of the University of Indiana. Check out his work translating Smolyak and Sferok's plays by Yada Zimmerman. From Czech to English. He is the first person to do that, and he's been performing those plays for years and years and years. And I dressed up as a woman for one of those.
Because he wanted to, not because he had to.
Because I wanted to. But we're getting back to Kevin McKernan, Chief Scientific Officer of Medicinal Genomics. And he was just, as we were going out to break, telling us about a brief overview of the limited history of genetic research into cannabis. But speaking of genetic research into cannabis, we were talking off air about the fact that, and I think anyone who's ever kind of had any sort of involvement in cannabis, even just as an end smoker, is kind of aware of this. There's a lot of counterfeiting of strains going on. And I think, as you mentioned in one of your videos, it's not always necessarily malicious or purposely deceitful. As you mentioned in one of your videos, sometimes it's just a telephone game. And whether it's someone making something up because they just don't know, or whether it's someone, writing down the wrong word or wrong letter, and then that gets transmuted as it gets distributed. Counterfeiting is definitely an issue. So what can genetics do as far as this counterfeiting problem goes? And then what can the blockchain do?
So the genetics of this just reduce the error rate in the telephone game, and the blockchain creates the trust that I think eliminates the counterfeiting, the nefarious forms of counterfeiting. But the non-nefarious ones are actually quite prevalent. If you look at strains like ChemDog, you can find spellings of it that are 3 or 4 different flavors of it, and we don't know if those are actually different genetics or just people that have played telephone. The same is true with a host of other strains, whether it be OG Kush or a handful of ones that have like Acadia Kush is sometimes spelled the Boston way without the R. Which is from Arcadia, actually, up in Maine. So that happens whenever people are just using handwriting, because the error rate in handwriting when you go through telephone games is probably like 1 in 100. The benefit about DNA sequencing is you can get the error rates up to like 10 to the minus 8th if you need to, depending on the techniques that you use. So, but generally we're probably at one error in a million using even simplistic forms of DNA sequencing for this. So that's what we're doing. The plan is we're sequencing 2 million bases in every single plant that we can get our hands on. We don't get our hands on the plant; we get our hands on the DNA for a bunch of legal reasons we can discuss later. But once we have those DNA sequence files, we basically run a SHA-256 digest on those. That gives us a fingerprint of the DNA fingerprint file that can fit into a blockchain transaction. We can't fit the whole sequence file into one, or maybe someone could, but it wouldn't be necessarily a very prudent thing to do to the blockchain right now with all the size limitations it has.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so we just been putting in a SHA digest for now, but that gives you a timestamp of when that DNA existed. So if anyone ever wants to contest whether that strain existed or not at a given time frame, it's really easy for you to show up with your DNA sequence information, run SHA-256, and demonstrate there's a transaction that matches that output that sits inside of a transaction on the blockchain. So it's a typical proof of existence system that you might see at Factom or other places. A really simplistic use of it, but incredibly valuable and important to a community that has this counterfeiting strain name game going on, because it just ends the whole debate over what's what. And that's incredibly important for being able to selectively breed. You don't want to try to do designed or any type of breeding program when you're dealing with complete anecdotes and folklore on both inputs.
Yeah, if you don't know what you're trying to, if you're trying to have a certain breeding outcome, say higher CBD or higher THC or whatever it is, and you don't have real certainty on the parents that you're using, you don't have to be a geneticist or botanist or whatever to know that you're shooting in the dark and there's likely to be errors, and not simply errors, but ones that you completely defeat the purpose of the project. So yeah, this is incredibly important. You say it's kind of a simple or simplistic use of the technology, but at the same time, like you said, it's really crucial because this could revolutionize not just cannabis and cannabis commerce, but commerce in general. It's funny you bring up Factom, because we've had the guys at Factom on many, many times. And last time we had Paul Snow on the past month, off air, he was just mentioning how Factum could be used to certify supply chains, and I think even Yeah, exactly. I think he even used, he didn't say cannabis, but I think he used produce as one of the examples.
Yeah. That was brilliant on his part. We've had some conversations with them, and we're probably too early for where they are. But I think eventually he's right that it's not just about this one strain or this one problem. What they have, they can use in every single manufacturing operations program to basically track RFIDs or other types of ingredients that go into every single product without there being a hidden ledger that disappears the moment there's a quality problem in the news.
Right. It's pretty remarkable stuff. God bless the blockchain. Well, and real quick, you said that counterfeiting, with counterfeiting and the error rate, you could make it like 10 to the negative 8 with this genetic stuff. Would that still over time lead to some uncertainty, that is significant, or is it so small that it would be like 20,000 years before it was even a problem? Do you know what I'm asking?
That's a good point. I haven't calculated that distance. But we're just trying to move the needle by at least 10,000 fold in the direction of more accuracy, because right now there really isn't any. but that error rate is probably, it is probably larger than what we need right now by maybe a couple orders of magnitude. I think what the market needs right now is just to get beyond, handwriting or human typeset error rates, and we can at least do 1,000-fold better than that with sequencing, and I think that will bring enough confidence into the market that no one's going to really be questioning the fourth or fifth decimal point in that place.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, I think instead of having genetics and science determine this, I think we need a priesthood of scribes who are willing to, perpetuate the names with no error throughout time of all of these varietals. No,
it always works better if it's on sheepskin.
A lot of things work better with sheepskin, right?
It lasts for 250 years,
I didn't work out so good for the sheep.
I know, right?
Right.
My grandmother still got pregnant. No, I'm just kidding.
We can clone this. It's fun.
That's true. Well, another thing is too, I guess another implication of using the blockchain to certify these strains is not simply to do that, which of course that's a remarkable and very necessary and useful thing, but it will eliminate the need for, sort of patenting, I guess, and trademarking that I think is already cropping up. Or what's your take on that?
Yeah, so IP is a really complicated space, but I tend to lean in the Kinsella direction on all this. It doesn't mean the market's going to go that direction.
Oh, Stefan Kinsella, nice.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, he's dead on this, but the market doesn't always operate that way, and so I think there are going to be cannabis patents that are both offensive and defensive that emerge. We've already seen one emerge in 2015 that claims a strain that is. I mean, claim one is actually somewhat. Probably people really tied in the space will claim it's narrow, but I think it being the first one out, there's always a chance that broader ones will emerge. But it basically covers a CBD THC strain that's a mixture. It has 50-50 of THC and CBD, and I think like a high myrcene content, which is a terpene for those who don't know. That arguably encompasses probably genetics that have been around for 30 years. But there's actually no proof of prior use of those genetics. They've not been notarized. They're not considered prior art in the eyes of the USPTO, and it's not their fault. It's a black market. They've got no way to actually definitively say those genetics existed before. So this is a bit of an artifact of a black market emerging into what you might consider, well, it's not a free market, but what you might be considered a regulated market. Is that the prior art doesn't really exist in any way that the state machinery is going to recognize. And so the biggest fear people have is more of these patents will come out, and if they don't have proof of their strain existing, they're going to get basically counterfeited. That's a kind of a term in poker, that someone's hand makes yours less valuable because it got played in front of you, but it wasn't necessarily the most valuable hand at first. So some of the sequencing is appealing to people because they can demonstrate and notarize digitally in time right now that their strain exists by doing this. They don't have to necessarily put their sequence out there. All they need to do is put their key out there. And they can prove that key in the transaction and with the timestamp of the blockchain can unwind the file. And that's the whole point of proof of existence.
Yeah, it's a pretty marvelous thing, and you're right. The sort of unintended consequences of a black market that black market in a sense is a free market, but it's a heavily impaired one, obviously because people aren't free to do everything that they otherwise would. And so the cannabis as a commercial and recreational thing, as well as a scientific and genetic field of research, has been so limited because of being illegal, and it's just terrible to think about all of the things that could have and would have happened had the government just stepped back and let people do their research. But as things become legalized and as things like blockchain technology allow people at least to certify strains and get credit for it, and to have more certainty with their research, it's going to help it move forward. Well, you mentioned something called terpene. Could you explain what that is?
Yeah, so a lot of angiosperms and flowering plants create terpenes. These are usually what you can smell in a plant. Like in basil, you'll oftentimes find eugenol, and you'll also find caryophyllene, beta-caryophyllene in some plants. You'll find myrcene in mangoes and oranges. Limonene you'll find in lemons and limes. You'll find pinene in some evergreens, and linalool and lavender. These are things that give the plants fragrance, but they're basically volatile organic compounds that outgas from the plants. But a lot of them are therapeutic, and they happen to be dialed right into the cannabinoid synthase pathway. The cannabinoid, half of the cannabinoid molecule is actually made by kind of gluing a terpene to an olivethol molecule, and that is interesting in that plants are always competing for making terpenes and cannabinoids in some way, shape, or form. But what is actually can be smelled by a dog is caryophyllene oxide. And it's very terrible at it, but you can't smell the cannabinoids; they're actually odorless.
So what you're saying in part is that there's a trade-off between producing cannabinoids and terpenes for the plant as far as energy or resources?
Yeah, a slight one. It's not it's not as direct as a 1-to-1, but the correlations there are usually around 15. The R scores are like 15 or 20, so they are dialed. You can tell they're chemically in the same pathway. But and they get moved around. Really high expressing cannabinoid content plants usually come with a slight decay of the monoterpenes. There's also another class of terpenes that are like two terpenes glued together, and they're like sesquiterpenes. But the monoterpenes are very small, volatile, and those ones get competed for in the synthesis of the cannabinoids. It's very rare you get emerald cup or cannabis cup strains that are really high on THC, because it usually means they don't have any terpenes and no one can taste them. So you tend to find ones that are a little bit more moderate that have some terpenes that actually win the cups.
That's a good point. People like their well-rounded cannabis. It's not all just about the high. They want the smell. They want the taste. They want the look, the bud density, etc. It's a really important point. Well, we're coming to break with Kevin McKernan, Chief Scientific Officer of Medicinal Genomics. We'll be right back. Stay tuned, guys.
They want the munchies.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
Show you right.
What else can I do? I'm so inspired by you, and I'm just holding for the longest time. Once I knew my stocks and bonds were gone, I knew
I was trying to think of. I almost had a joke there for what you were saying. It'll come to me. Welcome back, guys, to the Crypto Show. It is the third to last segment of this wonderful episode.
I want my hemp sandals logged onto the blockchain.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I like that. Are those your?
You have to be careful, because that hash digest, someone's going to smoke before you actually can confirm it.
Nice. Good one. Give him a rim shot. You gotta be quicker on the soundboard, Diddy. Come on, man.
I don't have that up right now.
That's all you ever used to do is the soundboard. And now you don't even do it anymore.
I know.
That was a good one.
That's because our guests have been so great lately. There's been no need for sound effects.
Well, that's true. But sometimes when they make a good joke, you got to recognize it with a rim shot. So, well, that great joke was from Kevin McKernan, Chief Scientific Officer of Medicinal Genomics. And we're happy to have him on during this cannabis month here on the Crypto Show. And we're just talking to him about terpenes. And we still have some other stuff to get into with him, but I kind of want to explore this a little more.
And pot jeans.
And pot jeans.
Better known as hippie pants.
That's good. That's good. There you go. I mean, simple.
There you go.
Oh, you give yourself
There's
a rim shot.
Oh, look at that. That's insider right there.
Am I right?
I have the button. You don't.
It's like self-nepotism. That's ridiculous. Well, so terpenes, basically, they're chemical compounds that add the smell, and similar ones in cannabis, if I'm not mistaken.
Sounds like essential oils.
Yeah, and so it's basically like with aromatherapy, they get the terpenes from other flower producing plants. And so when people say like this one smells like blueberry or this smells like orange, it's not all psychological. They perhaps literally are smelling some of the same terpenes that are
it is so real. You're gonna get a kick out of this. Yeah. So what you can do is you can do a terpene profile on an HPLC platform of a given plant. Let's take Blue Dream, like you were saying, right? And you get a little profile of all the different terpenes that are there. You can then go buy those compounds from a chemical company called Sigma and recombine them in the same ratios and make an oil that smells just like Blue Dream that you could arguably like put in a gin and tonic and have a Blue Dream gin and tonic. And there are people doing this now.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and it's a pretty good match, actually. I think your nose is really dialed into those things, and so just by nailing like maybe a dozen of the terpenes, they can get a really good signature for a strain.
That's really cool. Yeah, I know we don't have the strongest noses in the animal kingdom, but I guess considering the long history of cannabis and then just fruit-bearing plants with humans, that's at least certain smells that were, more finer tuned to pick up on. That is the coolest thing ever. I got to go to Colorado. My buddy lives up there. I've been meaning to go perhaps later this year. I'm going to try that. I'm going to have a Blue Dream gin and tonic. That sounds exciting. Well, so you kind of mentioned how these same terpenes also, like with aromatherapy, can activate your endocannabinoid system in your brain. And I know that with aromatherapy in general, there's a lot of scientific as well as anecdotal evidence that the various natural smells from the terpenes can, heighten your mood, make you more alert, or relax you. And so what I'm also curious about then is, do these terpenes or other chemical compounds besides cannabinoids in cannabis, do they have any other medicinal properties or psychological effects that are interesting?
Yeah, they do indeed. There's a great paper on this from Ethan Russo that talks about the entourage effect. And he goes through a handful of terpenes and what concentrations you need to take them in order for them to have effects. They're rarely ever deemed psychoactive effects. But for instance, beta-caryophyllene is almost as strong of a CB2 agonist as cannabidiol. So CB2 is a cannabinoid 2 receptor. It's not in your brain. It's mostly in your immune system in your periphery. But it's the one that CBD has some affinity for this, but many other receptors as well. But beta-caryophyllene is known to nail it. And it's also found in echinacea, which is why people probably think there's some kind of immune boosting properties to echinacea. And there's some truth to that. There's also one that's known as eugenol, which is in holy basil and also found in cannabis. And eugenol is an antispasmodic it's helpful for seizures.
It's also used widely by Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump.
No, that's called euthanasia, I think, or perhaps eugenics.
Eugenol.
It's huge. It's eugenol with a Y.
It's eugenol.
That did not deserve a rim shot.
I didn't give it one, did I?
Okay, there you go. And that's fascinating. And so they have the, as you call the entourage effect. Now, as you kind of already indicated, they don't necessarily have psychoactive effects. Can they nonetheless magnify or alter the psychoactive effects within a strain of cannabis?
Absolutely, yeah. So myrcene is known to accelerate the transition through the blood-brain barrier of THC, and linalool is known to be more of a sedative. There's also one in black pepper that will antagonize THC at the cannabinoid 1 receptor. So if you're having a bad experience, it's known to, folklore is actually true. You actually eat a couple black peppers and it should dampen the anxiety. So there's a lot going on there with the mixture of all the other terpenes.
That's really crazy.
This is the reason why the genetics are important, is to track these things can be a little bit complicated just using the chemical methods alone.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it already sounds complicated just as you describe it. I can only imagine how much more complicated it gets. But it's really fascinating stuff, and I don't think people appreciate it. Both people who are lovers of cannabis and smoke it all the time, how they appreciate the subtleties and complexities of what just goes into their high experience, as well as their multisensory experience that a lot of people, as I mentioned, are really big into. I know from a lot of people I know who smoke regularly that it's not just about the pure intensity of the high. Again, it's that, does it smell? How does it smell? How does it taste? And then those sort of entourage effects that at least alter the high from these terpenes. And it's so fascinating on just sort of a nerdy intellectual level. And who would have, it's so ironic too, because, up until, maybe the past 10, 15 years, cannabis had this association with, people being dumb and, slackers.
You are a huge nerd.
Exactly. Well, I want to get into a little bit the endocannabinoid system. It's such a fascinating thing to me. So, as you mentioned, cannabis is possibly one of the earliest, if not the earliest, sort of cultivated plants by humans. And of course, it's an interesting plant in itself that, barring cultivation, it is a weed. It can grow just about anywhere. It can grow to be 20 feet tall. It can only take a couple of, 2 to 3 months to get to full growth. It has all these amazing properties simply as a plant in itself. Well, where does this endocannabinoid system come from? Why do we have it? And what does that tell us?
So the endocannabinoid system is conserved evolutionarily other into sponges. So it's really a key regulatory system in our health. There's more cannabinoid 1 receptors in your body than any other receptor. And this is a completely missed what they call GPCR. These are the targets a lot of pharmacists target for. They're called G protein coupled receptors. And most of them are cannabinoid receptors, but no one's really touching those things right now from a pharmaceutical standpoint. So it gets involved in a handful of areas. The CB1 receptor in the brain is involved in memory. It's involved in a lot of signal transduction. So when you hear of neurotransmission going on at a really high frequency with maybe dopamine and serotonin, at a much lower frequency is what's known as a retrograde transmission of endocannabinoids to help kind of level that off. So you kind of have to think of high frequency communication going on with chemicals in your brain and other types of frequencies, which means sort of the speed at which these things react and transmit. And so they're very much a buffering system in that regard. When things get a little ataxic and out of control with the other high frequency the neurotransmitters, these cannabinoids help kind of dampen things that get out of whack, and this is why we think they're so helpful in looking at epilepsy, because epilepsy is usually derived from some type of channelopathy, which is a mutation in your genome that makes it so that you're not moving those neurotransmitters correctly, or you're not moving those calcium and sodium and potassium ions correctly in all that nerve transmission. And then outside of the body, or outside of the blood-brain barrier, they're involved in your immune system, and very much the same way. They tend to dampen the immune system down when it's hyperactive and bring it up when it's not active enough. So they're homeostatic regulators. So you end up finding them working in a tremendous number of diseases, from gastroenteritis and Crohn's disease up to Alzheimer's disease and epilepsy. It really spans more diseases than people are willing to accept, I think, which is why
that's pretty incredible. Well, we're coming to break. Sorry to interrupt, but we'll talk more about what he's saying on the other side.
Are you one of the millions of Americans affected by a chronic lung disease like emphysema or asthma? Your next round of therapy could involve musical toe-tapping fun. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back in a moment to tell you how.
Your search engine is watching you, recording all your searches and creating a massive database of your personal information. That's creepy, but it doesn't have to be that way. Startpage.com is the world's most private search engine. Startpage doesn't store your IP address, make a record of your searches, or use tracking cookies, and they're third-party certified. If you don't like Big Brother spying on you, start over with Startpage. Great search results and total privacy. Startpage.com, the world's most private search engine.
Medical devices are not usually known for being fun, but French musician Frédéric Yonnet has found a surprising alternative to his old asthma inhaler, a harmonica. After years of chronic asthma, Yonnet picked up the harmonica and found his breathing dramatically improved. Pulmonologists say the harmonica is like bodybuilding for the lungs, and patients across the country are using it to ease their breathing troubles. Pulmonologist Mei Li Han explains, to play a song, you have to be able to take a deep breath in and blow out against resistance, which can help strengthen the respiratory muscles. That helps patients relax their breathing and learn to control their airwaves. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
Chemtrails.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at LogosRadioNetwork.com.
I've been walking a tightrope between fact and fiction, been wrestling with demons in small bottle prisons, been talking to sinners who claim to be Christian, but shouting at leaders who claim to be listening, and the pendulum swings from the left to the right. Its momentum increases the need for the fight, like a moment of blindness and a lifetime of sight.
All right, guys, welcome to the second to last segment here on the Crypto Show on this lovely April 13th, 2016, a Wednesday here on Logos Radio Network, brought to you as always by Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements. And speaking of Brave New Books, our first guest on the show tonight, Tatiana Moroz, will be performing at Brave New Books on Saturday, I believe at 7 p.m. Don't quote me on that, but go to bravenewbookstore.com. Check out the events page. You can find out precisely when she is performing. You might as well come early. Come when we open at noon and just stay the whole day because there's always fun stuff going on, and you can read all the cool books and all the cool topics and get some health products to boost your health, including Tangy Tangerine and the full line of Berg Superfoods. You can check her out too at TatianaMoroz.com and at Twitter. Queen Tatiana as well. Well, we're talking with our second guest, of course, Kevin McKernan, Chief Scientific Officer of Medicinal Genomics. Pretty fascinating stuff, and very excited to have him on, and just learning so much about a simple plant known as cannabis, but it ain't so simple.
I never did know weed was so complicated.
Well, now you do.
You definitely need a higher education to understand it.
Yeah.
No rim shot for that. Oh my God.
That was good.
I'm sorry.
I think it took him a second to figure it out. That's why there was no rim shot. It was delayed.
No, I had my.
Sure, whatever. Sure, Danny.
My screen's up on deficiency. We're gonna have to report you.
Report you on the blockchain for permanent awareness. Well, so we're talking about the endocannabinoid system, and we touched upon how far-reaching that system is in the body, and how, as you said, it acts as a a homeostasis regulator, seemingly all throughout the body or in other systems, the nervous system, the gastrointestinal system. And, I want to touch on some of the potential medicinal benefits of cannabis. But I did want to ask you too, so the endocannabinoid system, you said it's there throughout the biological kingdom, down to the sea sponge. So I guess, why is that? Why is it so prevalent? And why does cannabis have so much of the chemicals that affect that system? And are there other cannabinoids in other plants besides cannabis?
So that depends on the definition of a cannabinoid, which the term has gotten, it's changed a little bit over time. So now we consider things to be phytocannabinoids, which are from the plant, and then there are endocannabinoids from our body. Our body makes 2 cannabinoids. It's known to make about 100, but the 2 that are heavily studied, it's anandamide, which is known as a bliss molecule, and 2-AG. Anandamide is Sanskrit for bliss. So those 2 are the ones that we study quite a bit. It turns out that truffles actually make anandamide, so they're not unique to human. And the phytocannabinoids, however, most of the ones in the cannabis plants seem to be pretty unique to cannabis. We're not seeing any other plants make those exact things. But the closest thing we can do is look at the DNA sequence of THC synthase, and we see there's a little region in that gene called a berberine ring or berberine bridge enzyme. And that same type of functional domain we can see in poppy, folding some of the opiates, and all the way through the angiosperms. In fact, it goes all the way back into fungi. So we don't really know the real ancestral source of THC synthase. In terms of the endocannabinoid system in general, we do see that there's linkages into the mitochondria. A lot of the mitochondria nerves have CB1 receptors on them. And for those not familiar with some of the ancient history here, mitochondria were a genome acquisition that probably occurred millions of years ago and has been responsible for most eukaryotic life. So this probably has something to do with the fact that these things are signaling mitochondria on what to do. And therefore, they're involved in all types of metabolism and energy control.
Well, that's pretty crazy. So at a very fundamental cellular level, it's funny that they're involved in energy because, the typical.
The stereotype is that, you're couch locked with these things, but there are strains that make people do push-ups, so it really depends on the person, and I think and the right type of dosage they get.
That's true. And of course, that's indica, but sativa can make you, very energetic. And I think you even mentioned that there's one out there that actually makes you less hungry, which I really need. And
that's called THCV. It's got a variant at the end of it, which means the side chain on the molecule's got 3 carbons instead of 5. Very subtle change, but exact opposite thing of THC.
Do you happen to know what strains it's more common in?
It's not in Girl Scout cookies. That's all I know.
Well, that doesn't help. Oh well.
No. Actually, that is a very hot topic right now. People are trying to find that at higher than like 1 or 2% in the plant. It's very hard to find right now. I think I heard a rumor of somebody who may have hit a 4 or 5% THCV strain, and that's a rare find. So I don't know the name of it, but if anyone's out there that has it, let's sequence it and get it on the blockchain.
There you go. And that's what the show is about too, is like if anyone who has scientific interest in this is listening, you can get in touch with Kevin McKernan or other people in the field and make these things happen. One thing I wanted to mention just real quick too before I get to my next question is that it reminds me of Terence McKenna. If anyone's ever heard him on YouTube or read him, you should. Terence McKenna, he has he's a very brilliant guy, has a lot of books about psilocybin and mushrooms, but, sort of relatedly, he gets into sort of spiritual and mystical aspects of, sort of the beyond science stuff, obviously very speculative and subjective, but, this weirdness of how these psychoactive plants go all the way back through human history and have these weird relations with us on a cellular and genetic level, and have been used in shamanic traditions for a long time. So check out Terence McKenna. Some interesting food for thought, as it were. Well, as we were kind of already talking about too, and we'll get into some other stuff as well. I think everyone at this point who has half a brain is for cannabis legalization, and you don't have to be a pothead yourself to be for that, because it's a harmless plant. It doesn't kill people like the legal prescription drugs or alcohol or tobacco do, and it has so many potential medicinal uses, as well as the fact that hemp. It can be used for all sorts of industrial uses. Well, what are some of the
hippie sandals?
Like hippie sandals, exactly. Well, what are some of the primary medicinal benefits of cannabis, and then what are some of the maybe either lesser known ones or ones that are really like cutting edge hot topics in the field?
All right, so the obvious ones are probably epilepsy because they're so dramatic. You can see these young kids that are just struggling, and then hours later their seizures stop, and it's really life or death for those children. That tends to also trickle a little bit into autism, in that 30% of the kids with ASD have seizures, and so there's clearly some overlapping channelopathies or etiologies to those diseases that both of them share. It's starting to show its place in traumatic brain injury. So a lot of NFL football players are now on the bandwagon to make this change because it seems to be a neuroprotectant. So if you had a lot of the work in stroke and in concussions shows that it reduces the neural inflammation after concussion. And so it's probably you can't make helmets any bigger. You can only get an internal neural circuitry that's better. And it seems as if CBD does that. Interestingly enough, that exact application was was patented by the U.S. government, which has created a bit of a conspiracy. And then some of the more esoteric ones are probably it's always known that in cancer it helps with eating and it helps with sleep, nausea and vomiting and pain, sometimes palliative issues. What's probably less known out there is that there's now a lot of papers emerging, and it's not just now, they've been trickling out over the last decade, that it demonstrates in some tumors it actually crushes the tumor. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. You tend to get people who are complete reefer madness or complete, cannabis panacea. And the truth is somewhere in between, where some tumor types it probably works and we don't exactly know which ones to apply to today. It's certainly a safe gamble to take because you're not going to overdose yourself on this stuff, where you certainly may on 5-FU and cisplatin. So there's, I think it's going to get a lot of traction in the cancer field in the coming years just because of this.
That's pretty incredible. And again, helping with brain injury or potential neurological issues is really huge. And it's interesting that it may help with autism as well as with traumatic brain injury, because I suspect autism can be caused by brain injury.
What about plaque reduction for Alzheimer's?
Yeah, that's on there as well. Those are harder studies to nail, but it tends to have a little bit more THC in that pathway. You may know that there's a lot of acetylcholine connections to Alzheimer's, which is why people are given Aricept, which is meant to increase acetylcholine levels. But
easy.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show here on this lovely Wednesday, April 13th, 2016. A good friend of mine's birthday, Craig Cravens. Check him out. You can actually find him online.
I have my hand raised.
Go ahead, sir.
Hey, Rick, if you're still listening, hang out until after the show. I have a question to ask you about hail damage in San Antonio.
Hail damage in San Antonio. Mumble. Hillcountry Home Improvements for all your roofing needs. We're talking with our guest, Kevin McKernan, Chief Scientific Officer for genomics. I'm sorry, medicinal genomics. I don't know why I keep not getting that.
I know you want to say Factum.
I know that's probably what it is. Well, it's because we got Brian Deary, Chief Scientist of Factum. We always have on, so I think I'm getting some sort of mental interference there.
A little Alzheimer's, maybe.
I can read your mind. I can totally
probably a little Alzheimer's, which as Danny was. Actually, let's finish that out. We were kind of cut off by the break, but
I was having an Alzheimer's moment and didn't realize it was almost break time.
Yeah, you've had Alzheimer's moments.
Yeah, so there are connections with THC on that front, and it's through a pathway that's there's a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine where it works on that, but that's also pointed the field toward PTSD, and there's a lot of action in PTSD as well. And I think there's something like 22 veterans a day, sadly, that are committing suicide over this. And the solution is likely cannabis and maybe MDMA, but it's nearly impossible to get the VA to consider either of those.
Do you think? I mean, you mentioned the word conspiracy, so real quick, I'm just going to ask a simple question.
How would the VA? Who would pay the VA to use marijuana? Where would Big Pharma?
It's not so much that; it's that if a soldier or veteran decides to use cannabis and they detect it in their blood, they cut off their benefits.
Yeah, I know a guy who's a veteran. I see him somewhat regularly, and he's
they
pretty
lose their gun rights. They lose their rights to any more healthcare. So it's a bit of a
it's really ridiculous. Well, and I will forget my question. I'll just make the statement. It's very peculiar that things like MDMA, psilocybin, DMT, and cannabis have been illegal for so long when they clearly have so many benefits that the government itself admits or has done studies on. It makes you wonder. But anyway, but let's get back. I mean, it's fascinating. It has so many potential benefits, and it's a crime that it's been illegal for so long. And it's these charlatans in the government who try to pretend like they're doing us a service by keeping it prohibited. Like here in Texas, the governor, Greg Abbott, like barely let it non-psychoactive cannabis be used for these epilepsy patients. But the fact of the matter is, THC has that same
some of the kids need THC, and they're afraid to say it. It's third rail.
Right, exactly. It has the, what was it? Entourage effect. Thank you. I can't even think. Well, I wanted to ask you, I want to get into this CanMed 2016 before we finish up. But before we get, and also want to get to Canopedia. But first, tell us about this batch tree graphic that you sent me. You were almost going to get into that earlier.
Oh, yeah. So this is a phylogenetic tree of everything that's getting launched in Colorado this month. So there's about 100,000 different products that are hitting the marketplace that were genetically certified with our service. We don't make these products. We just make sure the DNA has been sequenced in all the products and that we can link that to a seed to sale barcode in the Colorado tracking system. It's known as a metric system. And this is happening.
So that sounds like 3M. We don't make stuff. We just make it better.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. We're just trying to track it. But the 30% of the market in Colorado is not vertically integrated, whereas 70% is forced by law to be vertically integrated. So this is the equivalent of making your home brewery have to grow their own wheat. So that's the way they've decided to regulate the cannabis market in Colorado, is that every dispensary has to have 70% of their product coming through their own grow house, which is ridiculous from an economic standpoint. The other 30% of the market can be more free for all, and so they're exchanges. You had a question. Sorry.
Well, no, I just wanted to point out, sorry, and I know we don't have too much time, but that creates barriers to entry for competitors, and then also it gives huge advantage to existing. Huge. Thank you. But it gives, then that's just one of those corrupt, ridiculous, under the radar ways in which politicians give advantage to large existing businesses at the expense of everybody else. And that's ridiculous, because obviously if you have to vertically integrate, it's very capital intensive, very expensive, and only people with lots of money already can handle that. So it gives them unfair advantage. What were you going to say, Danny?
I was just wondering if there was a Donald Trump strain.
There should be, right?
Trump.
It's huge. But anyway, sorry to get off on that tangent, but an important point I felt. Well, and so you were your product StrainSeek certifies or has certified over 100,000 different cannabis products, you were saying.
Yeah, that probably derives back to about 80 or so genetics. Because when we do a certification, it's actually encompassing a bunch of clonal replication of a particular strain that then produces X amount of product that gets divided up into smaller and smaller point of sale pieces. But this is linked into the Marijuana Enforcement Division's metric system that actually does seed to sale tracking, and that's important because if we don't have a really tight chain of custody, the genetics are meaningless. That has to be linked right into that system that is tracking these seeds to sale. But this is building a nice phylogenetic tree. So what you see on this graphic that we'll post on one of your websites here is a tree that shows the genetic distance of all the strains from one another. And you'll have to basically use a ruler to measure the distance between these lines, and you get a sense of how far apart they are genetically. But you can visually get a really quick glance at this just by looking at where all the strains are. And a couple of things pop out as you can clearly see some strains like Snoop's Dream and Blue Dream are nearly identical on this. So clearly someone probably just decided to add Snoop's name to that up in Seattle, see if it would sell a little bit better. And you can also see a handful of things that were in the Emerald Cup this year that look identical to things that have been around before. We have a handful of Emerald Cup winners on here, which is really nice because you can see all the things that won the Emerald Cup this year. They're linked in. We have the chemical, what we call the chemotype, which is the THC levels and the terpene levels in this database. They're not yet live on the website. We're working on that now, but you can quickly scan through this and look for things that are related to hemp, things that have a high amount of CBD, which is really important for the epilepsy folks, and then also decide whether know whether or not your strain's a Kush or some type of Rhodioralis genetics.
And where can people get this? It's on the website or no?
We'll send you guys a copy. It is on our website, but right now our website's going through some construction for the 420 launch. So I think if you go there right now or whenever this releases, it may or may not be on that link. But Canopedia.info has one of them, and I'll make sure this gets to you and up to that site before this goes live.
Yeah, please do. We've got about 4.5 minutes left. So tell us a little more about Canopedia and tell us about CanMed 2016.
All right. So yeah, Canopedia is this Wikipedia we're building, which will have the genetics of all these strains. People can get their material sequenced. It's their choice whether they want to put it public on that or not. They can always have access to how their strain looks compared to everything else we have in our database. But if they choose to hold their cards tight, that's their call. We encourage people to go public with it because we think it floats all boats. This is a service right now that's going to be launched in Colorado and in California in the next week. So it will quickly grow from there. there. The CanMed conference is really looking at how do we apply this to humans. And so this just happened at Harvard Med School this week. We had Raphael Mechoulam, the discoverer of THC and the discoverer of the endocannabinoid system, come and give a keynote, and a variety of other speakers that were talking about case studies in epilepsy and autism and chronic pain as to how cannabinoids are being used in those cases. So it's very much a medical conference, but you also find that families are in there and will be as knowledgeable about this field as some of the physicians are, because their kids' lives are on the line. So it's a really good mix. It's going to happen next year. This year it brought in about 250 people. We're expecting probably twice that next year based on the feedback we had. But it really goes into the weeds, if you will, on the genetics of the plant and the genetics of the patients.
That's pretty incredible. And so this year was the first annual event for CanMed.
It was actually, and everyone was quite surprised that we managed to pull this off on the campus of Harvard Med School. But I think it's a sign that times are changing.
Absolutely. If you're able to host that at Harvard Medical School, one, it gives a lot of credibility, and two, it is an indication that the times are changing, because if an Ivy League school is willing to host it, then that shows you that people are really starting to change their mind about cannabis amidst all the propaganda and BS that has surrounded it over the years, thanks to the government and thanks to the media. So we really applaud people like Kevin McKernan and everyone else involved in CanMed, everyone at Medicinal Genomics and Courtagen Life Sciences for all the work they're doing, and everyone in this space who is trying to multiply the use of cannabis for both recreational and medicinal purposes and knowledge about it, so that we can dispel the ignorance that persists to this day. Remarkably, I don't know how some people in this world are crazy. So really awesome stuff. We've got about 1 minute and 45 left. Tell us where people can go to the websites for Courtagen and Medicinal Genomics, the website for CanMed 2016, Cannapedia, and all that.
Yeah, so we did film everything live at the conference. Those videos should be up shortly. But if you go to medicinalgenomics.com, you can probably get to all of these places, and you can look for Cannapedia on that website, and you'll run into some of the genetics that we've been doing. And I will do a shameless plug in that we are hiring to try and build this cannabis genetics LinkedIn website. So if you've got great web development skills, Bitcoin and blockchain transactions, and you like this field, we'll be hiring quite a few in the area in the next coming months.
And are you only hiring on the web development and blockchain end, or on other ends as well?
Oh, no, we actually have, let's see, we're up to 100 people now. So we grew about 100% last year. We're anticipating the same growth rate next year. There's definitely, there's opportunities in the molecular biology front and also on the bioinformatics front. We're also looking for a few folks in sales on the West Coast.
Okay, excellent. Well, if you're one of those people who might be a good candidate, or you know someone, check out those websites and, submit your resume. Well, Kevin McKernan, we have 30 seconds left. Any final thoughts for us?
The final thought to consider is that there are more cannabis plants sprouting every year than humans. And so you have to stop and think about who's gardening who, and that this plant is extraordinarily important for health.
Who will guard the guarders, or who will watch the watchers? That's hilarious. Kevin McKernan, Chief Scientific Officer of Medicinal Genomics. Pleasure having you on.
All right, cheers. Take care.
We'll see you guys next time.